Hi there, welcome back. For this devlog, I wanted to focus on the dresses and character sprites, but since I've been dreading this part, I kinda ended up not doing anything for a while, until I decided to start small with the first dress, because you can only access the other dresses after you level up. Last devlog, I was stuck on the outline shader, and when I went back to fix it, I genuinely got it working within 15 minutes. So I was just staring at the screen like, damn. It really was that easy. I was just too frustrated to figure it out last time, which honestly sums up the entire project perfectly. Then I started with the art and redid the mannequin to fit the dresses, and this took so long it's actually not even funny anymore. I kept going back and forth and redoing a lot of aspects. As for the dresses, I found an ice cream themed color palette on Pinterest, and I thought it would be really fun to design the dresses based on some of the ice creams. These are the sketches I made, but for this devlog we are working with the first one only. This is how it ended up looking like. I changed some aspects of it, but overall I think it's alright. I added the mannequin to the project and worked on the code for the mannequin with the dress when the player clicks on it, which is a completely different sprite by the way. Anyways, the code was pretty straightforward, but for some reason it didn't work until I realized I was replacing the sprite with itself, so that's why there was no change. And now it works pretty well. However, I didn't want it to just change like that without any special effects. So I wanted to make a sparkling particle for when the dress is put on. To make it, I found a sprite sheet from Pinterest as well, and I wanted to replicate it. Now, I don't know anything about making sprite sheets, but this video really helped me out. And I used Figma, which I was already familiar with, as I did a whole UI project using it. I drew the sprites myself, and here they are all lined up nicely. I also don't remember how to work with particles, and Godot 4 uses a completely different system for them. This tutorial helped me out in figuring out the basics, but then it was up to me to make all the adjustments, and it went as you'd expect. A total mess. Looking back at it now, it's so funny seeing the particles burst in random directions, and it took me a long time to find the balance between all the attributes. This is a bit more manageable, but I did change it a bit later on. In code, I made it so that the particle can only emit once instead of forever, and it emits when the player clicks the mannequin. And this is how it looks. If you don't notice, the gameplay becomes really laggy when the particle starts. Even though it's such a small amount of particles, but it's still lagging. And I used a CPU particle for this, because I read it's best if the particle amount is small, but honestly now I'm considering changing the type to a GPU particle. Anyways, let's move on for now. An issue I was having with this project since the start was how long it took to get through the first dialogue to the room gameplay. But I also couldn't start the game directly from the room scene, because through that first dialogue we get the player name and also which crown they choose. I really wasted so much time, because every time I made any small changes to the room gameplay, I still had to get through the dialogue. And since the first ever devlog, I looked into making a save and load system, but I also read that it has some security issues, which made me not want to approach it at all. But now I realize that I can literally only use it for myself. It's only used by me since no one else can work on this project, so I don't have to worry about any malicious code injections or anything like that, so I finally decided to implement it. I followed this tutorial and used the first method. I made a canvas layer with 2 buttons and customized them a bit. For the code inside the buttons, I had a bit of a rough time trying to figure out exactly what arguments I needed to add, but overall it was pretty straightforward. Here it is saving the data I specified. And then next debug game, I added different data, but then recovered the saved ones, and it's working as intended. I added that same canvas layer to the first ever scene, so that I can easily go to that point, and run into some issues with the same path, but eventually got it working, thankfully. The last thing I worked on for this devlog was the GUI bar. I changed the idea of it to be the inventory of chocolate. So basically, if there is an item that you're only going to use once, or you might take a long time before you use it again, then it's going to be placed in this inventory. I added 6 markers and tried to place them evenly. Now, I don't even know what 6 items I can put in here, but that's for future bearers to decide. After that, I worked on the first dialogue that happens when you enter the room, and the dialogue for the inventory task, so that when it's over, then it's time for the player to press the E key and view the inventory to place the crown there. I'm kind of working backwards here, but I then added a collision to the bed so that if the player collides on it, then that dialogue will start. It makes sense, I swear. I added character portraits in the dialogue like I usually do, but it looked really weird because now there's two princesses on screen, so I got rid of it to avoid confusion. Now the idea here was that once the dialogue ends, not only can you view the inventory, but the crown should have an outline when the mouse hovers over it, so the player understands it's interactable and you should drag it in the inventory. And this took so long. Like, it had lots of issues that genuinely caused my head to explode. To name a few, apparently there's this tiny speck of color in the right crown sprite that I never noticed until the outline was applied, and it annoyed me so much that I played the game again to choose a different crown and save that data. And lo and behold, the other crown also has that same issue, so that's great. Then the mouse dragging was a joke. I mean, look at this. I don't know what happened, but I kinda gave up and worked on the inventory again. I wanted to add white squares in the node so that you know where each item should be placed. But I forgot I needed to animate it, like the GUI bar sprite. So in-game it ended up being static and always appearing when the game starts. And the dragging issue is still there, by the way. I genuinely have around 15 minutes of footage of me trying to figure this out, but it got late, so I went to sleep. And as I was laying down and contemplating all my life's choices, I realized that why not just have a pop-up message for the player to click, and then the crown would automatically go in the right spot. That's literally why I added the markers, but somehow along the way I just forgot about them. So in true Barry fashion, this bit will have to be continued in the next devlog. And since we're on this topic, I just want to say a few notes. The videos I mention in my devlogs are not obviously the only tutorials I use for my project. I only add specific ones that either tackle something uncommon in a really understandable way, or they have been the most helpful to me out of all the tutorials on that aspect. Another thing is that my last semester of college just started, which means I have way less free time on my hands. So if I upload anything within the next 3 to 4 months, then it's a miracle, trust me. I'm also planning to save up all my free time this semester to make the game art for this project instead of making devlogs, so that when I'm actually done with college, I can have all the game art ready for me to start programming, so that I don't have to alternate between making the game art and programming, and it's really stressful. So yeah, that is the plan for the next few months. Anyways, thank you for watching and stay hellish.